Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
and inspire you to do even greater things.
Before we jump into today's conversation, a special thanks to PM Power Consulting for encouraging and supporting this show right from the start. With over 1,000 person years of collective experience, PM Power has helped many organizations, teams, and individuals chart out their own journeys of excellence and make progress. Thank you, PM Power. Now, let's move to today's episode. I'm in conversation with Deepak Mittal, CEO of FFTalos Technologies today. In this insightful episode, Deepak shares his career journey from coding to consultative selling, reflecting on his evolution from a tech enthusiast to a sales leader driving large-scale digital transformation. He explores solution-based selling, the importance of understanding customer needs, and why sales is more about facilitation than persuasion. He also sprinkles this conversation with some of his stories from his own experience. Listen on. Hi, Deepak. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Thanks, Shiv. Thanks for having me.
I'm looking to actually learn a lot from you because from the side of delivery, when you actually interact with customers. But before we get into those things, if you can start with your origin story, how you got associated with IT and the kind of roles that you've played, that you've enjoyed, whatever else, and then we can take it from there.
So I studied my engineering in the 80s, and IT industry was just coming into its own. Wipro and HCL were the well-known companies, and they were both in single digits in crores of rupees. So I started reading about IT industry. I made up my mind that this is the industry I want to work in. I had set my heart on being a coder. Actually, I used to really enjoy coding. I would spend long nights in the computer center solving intricate problems. And one example I remember is that there is this problem where you move the one of the knight around on the chessboard, right? And you have to do. And my first program, I would do that in 50-60 minutes, I think. And then by the time I finished refining it, and I was doing coding in BASIC, I was able to do it in less than a minute. So I was very happy with that. I thought, I'm going to write compilers, and I wanted to work for Microsoft. But as fate would have it, I didn't go to US. I did coding for a while for a company called IPCL, which is now part of Reliance Petrochemicals, I think. And I realized that, sitting in that cold room, air-conditioned room, like, all the IT facilities used to be heavily air-conditioned in those days. I wasn't really enjoying it. And I was actually happier, when I had to go out and talk to potential users of my software who were going to actually use this warehouse from factory to warehouse software that I was writing for them. And I thought, I really enjoyed listening to their business problems and what they thought that the software should do for them. So that's where it started occurring to me that maybe, I should be on the business side of things. And I was lucky enough to, have some very good people who were my bosses, who were all very technical people. Those early days of IT industry, it was same people who were doing the coding, who were also doing the selling. There was not too much of this separation between MBAs and non-MBAs, etc. And I was just lucky to get with them, and then it just built upon itself. As I worked deeper, I figured out solution selling, as again consultative selling, different kinds of selling methods, and one just picks up preferences as one goes along. So my last role was with TCS, where I was basically looking after digital transformation for telecom service providers. and which is a fairly complex sale. It was a pretty large business. So in a sense, I just cited that example as I started by selling desktop softwares, which cost probably a few thousand rupees, to deals which are 50 million, 100 million. So over a period of time, it's been a progression in value terms as well as in terms of the intellectual challenges.
Yeah, wonderful. So many of the guests that you have all had an experience on the delivery side. Now, when you said that, after being a coder, you actually love interacting with the users, understanding their problems. In terms of the challenge to learn something or to understand what is needed. So even to write code, I start with specs and understanding what is there. Was there any big shift or difference between the two roles?
The tools changed. The
Hmm.
tools changed, but I think the fundamentals of both roles, to be successful in either role, is really your ability to understand what the business needs. Sometimes in our industry, we call it about customers being successful, right? And sometimes for that, you need to override the customer and actually bring a little bit of your own understanding to this. So it is very similar, just that the tools are different.
Okay. And you also mentioned solution-based selling and a consultative selling approach, right? Can you elaborate a little more on that? And then what is your preferred model?
So it's, these are just labels. So honestly, end of the day, these are labels we give to how a customer purchases. End of the day, people purchase for their own reasons. People sometimes tend to think a bit too highly of themselves, their own role in making the sale, etc. But really speaking, we are just facilitating the customer in making the decision. So consultative selling would be where you are not starting from your, whatever. Let's say I'm trying to sell this spectacles, for example. Do I start that, with it's got great quality, good material, superb clear glasses, etc. Do I start by talking about what problem you're facing as a potential user? So that is the difference between consultative selling and a product feature-based selling. Right. So a lot of times, young salespeople, especially, and myself included, when I started my life, I was also like that. We would just, for us, a sales call was about going through our feature list as quickly and as smoothly as we can. We used to be really happy when we could deliver that in 1 minute without really asking the customer why you should be buying it. And so consultative selling is really the reverse of that. It doesn't start from the product is nowhere in the picture. The proposition is nowhere in the picture. You really start by understanding the customer's problems and then contextualizing your solution. So you build to a solution rather than starting with a solution. So that I think is a paradigm shift that one has to achieve.
But when you're working in the technology industry, beyond understanding just the technology part or the features, like you mentioned, to understand what the customer's problems are, how much of a depth should you go into their domain?
One should not come across as an expert trying to teach the customer how they should be doing business. That's a fine line. It's a matter of one's own personal preference, how deep you want to go, honestly. But it is very important that when we are talking to the customer, we ask the right questions, something that tells the customer that, yes, I'm genuinely interested. And then we also have the humility to shut up and listen to what the customer is telling us and clarify where we can. So I think understanding the industry helps. So if I'm, for example, selling to a telecom customer, as against somebody who's in a process manufacturing, let's say. Both of them may be directors, okay, but they will have very different business drivers. They will have very different pressures acting on them. So my solution may mean different things to the two people. Even if let's say I've got an analytics solution, which can be equally useful in a process industry as it is in a telecom industry, but the use cases are totally different for a telecom customer, and they are totally different for the other customer. So to that extent, understanding the domain of the customer that you're selling to, understanding the role and their respective business drivers is important. Some of it will only come with experience. Somewhere proactive reading helps.
So in these situations, when you go meet a prospect for the first time, how do you typically understand, what their needs are or what their pain points are, or that empathy? Are there any tools or techniques to do that?
What I personally do is that I definitely look up the LinkedIn profile of the person that I'm going to meet. I definitely do try to catch up on social media. What is that company tweeting about? What are they talking about? Uh, yeah, it probably just takes an hour, couple of hours of your time. But if at all you have done a little bit more homework before the first meeting, then that person is not merely somebody that you're meeting in order to get a deal, but it is somebody who's a real person with some real issues, real problems. Just trying to think of a good example from my experience. So there's this person, I won't name the company, obviously, for obvious reasons. He was heading the testing function um, for a telco. And so, one is, of course, I'm representing a large IT services company. So obviously I have this whole pitch about, how great we are at doing testing, and I have a number of case studies, right? I read about how this company, that my customer's company, is trying to change into a very agile mode of operation. I'm talking about some 5 years ago. Agile was, a lot of companies were really going into large scale agile transformations. And so that means that the way you prioritize initiatives, the way you execute on them, the way you measure your success, everything is going to change. And I read about this. Obviously, there's not a great deal of information available. Companies do not make such information public. To whatever extent I could, I tried to understand what would be this person's context. And then I tried to pick up from the plethora of case studies that we have, those one or two case studies which I thought might make sense to him. But then, even then, I really wanted him to speak a lot more. And so we tried to do, so this person actually collaborated with us in building the solution that he wanted.
Oh, okay.
Right. And I think that is really the kind of selling that one should be doing, rather than trying to go and teach people what you have. Ask them what they would like to have. And this kind of co-owning of the solution, I think, is the pinnacle of consultative selling.
Yeah, two takeaways for me from this is that the first is you can't just walk in and wing it, right?
Now that I think is a disaster. And
Yeah.
that is what gives salespeople the bad name, because they are seen as these smooth talking hustlers sort of people. One of the books somebody gave me when I just started on my sales career, I think the title of the book was "To Sell Sand to an Arab" or "To Sell Ice to an Eskimo." I think those are really, really outdated paradigms. That's my personal perspective. One shouldn't be selling sand to an Arab. Why? No.
In fact, I remember reading somewhere this whole term pitch or pitching comes from the salesman who would just pitch to sell. Yeah. So the second thing that I kind of inferred, so to say, is that you say that people buy from people. So that is
Yes.
this network or the relationship. When you said that you co-created a solution or help them also have some stake in what is being done, right? So when it comes to network, how do you build for the future? A general probably misunderstanding, I hope, is that salespeople get excited only by the commissions. No, which means that can I close a deal? Okay, if not, I don't want to focus on anything else. But network is something that you invest in for the future, right? So
I,
how do you kind of
I think
uh,
the best salespeople are those who don't really focus on commissions. You know what
yeah.
this oft repeated, slightly cliched Gita's shlok karmanyevadikarastu
Hmm.
ma phaleshu ka. It applies equally in sales as it does in other fields. You focus on what you need to do,
Hmm.
and the results follow. Okay. I think in this world, which is overexposed to digital networking, people are tired of, just building networks.
Hmm.
And they have become a little more matter of fact about these things. If I network with someone, if somebody is reaching out to me, immediately the question that comes is that, why? And is it of any use to me? Right.
Hmm.
So first of all, I think one should be networking all the time. It is not something that you do when you are closer to a sale. Okay. You should be talking to people with a curious perspective. I'm trying to understand what they're doing, what kind of problems they're facing, what sort of things are happening in this world, what kind of technologies are there, how is the work changing. Having that intellectual curiosity and engaging with people at that level means that when the time does come where you can pitch something, you will be able to do it in the right way without seeming to be in their face. And nobody likes that. Nobody likes. Secondly, this digital customer has also changed in a very important respect from the time when I started selling in 1990. Uh, Communication used to be one way in those days. Companies used to control the direction of communication. There were no websites. The only way the customer would come to know of us is through another customer
Hmm.
or through the salesperson. So salesperson will have those brochures, will have flyers, goodies that you would leave on the customer's table. So communication was this one way. Today, I think my personal experience, customers know already a lot more about your product than you do. They are not looking at the salesperson as the primary means of information. In any case, salesperson was always a very discredited source of information because, by nature, they are expected to talk highly about what they are selling. So nobody pays much attention to them anyway. So customer is now part of online communities. They have many different interest groups. Uh, Getting information from somebody else is so easy now. The websites are there, your different points of communication are there, your social media is there, right? So already before you have shaken hands with the customer knows 70 to 80% of what. So there is very little really by way of that information sharing function. Then
Hmm.
what do you do as a salesperson if you're not going to be the primary means? Then you really have to now be able to contextualize your solution to the problem that the customer is facing. Obviously, he's not going to come out and say, this is the problem that I'm facing. First of all, you need to dig a little more to find out what exactly is the situation you have walked into.
Hmm.
And then you have to put your solution there and why it makes sense for that person to buy.
Hmm.
So selling has changed uh, over the years.
Being on the other side as a buyer, one of my earlier roles as handling all the tool procurement and all that. So interacting with different vendors. I've seen models where some organizations, there's only one person, who kind of comes, engages, does some of these things that you mentioned. And there are some others who always come as a team. In fact, with one of them, they say that it doesn't matter how many people you have, this vendor will always have at least one more person in a meeting. Okay. Um, so in terms of your experience, has it been more of a solo selling or as a team selling? And then again, are there different dynamics that one needs to be prepared for? Can one be trained for that, or does it come naturally? Probably I'm trying to pack too many things.
No, it's I understand the intent of the question. But before I answer, I just want to ask you, which one did you like more? The single guy or the team as a
If you were
customer?
to distill out, it is always a single person interaction. But even when it is a team that comes there, I would, because there are different experts who are all having different perspectives and all that. Invariably, after an initial meeting, I would engage with one-on-one conversations with some of them. Now, if I have to go deeper into that, maybe that has been my style because I also want to know a little more and to understand.
It's a little longer, a long-winded answer, but
Sure. Yeah.
I'll try and keep it interesting.
Yeah.
Indian companies, people tend to grow up trying to do too many different things. Okay, so, and this is a generalization, there would always be exceptions, but by and large, the salesperson from an Indian company typically would like to answer all your questions, even if he doesn't know. He hates to admit that I don't know. And so he'll try to be the pre-sales person. He'll try to be, a troubleshooting expert. You have any kind of a challenge, he's the guy, he wants you to call. International companies, people have very well-defined roles. So if you go to a IBM, for example, the relationship manager is just that. He's just a relationship manager. He's not supposed to be a technical expert. There are different people who bring different, and the networking guy only talks about networking, and the data warehousing guy will only talk about data warehousing, and they will not try to cross paths with each other. Okay, so the nature of the solutions has become a lot more complex. It's very rarely the case that it's a one-point solution, especially in a B2B situation. And so therefore, you will need to have different people, and it helps increase the trust. If you say that, look, I'm not the right person to give you this answer, but let me get you the right person. Okay, and there's one element here which I want to quickly touch upon, and maybe we'll discuss it later also, is that a lot of times mistakes happen when people commit, but they don't deliver. Okay, so
I'll come to that later.
Yeah. So as against that, you have this model where the salesperson is trying to, now if the roles are not clearly defined and the teams are there in the meeting, generally trying to do a good job, of course, nobody wants to do a bad job, but in a very abstract, undefined way. So one very bad example I have from my experience is an Indian company which I worked for, a very large deal with a telecom operator. And we submitted a proposal, a very large proposal running into 2000 pages, I think. We had 114 people from our side, 114 in a hall. And customer had 2 people. Okay, so that is the one extreme kind of an example. And but generally speaking, I have seen good sales calls being made where you don't have to bring a lot of people into the meeting. You bring that 1 or 2 people who you think, and this is something that you can find out in advance as to who are the people that are really needed in this meeting. And there is this natural desire on part of people to want to look good in front of their own bosses, etc. So everybody tries to wangle their way into the call, and that's where I think salesperson becomes the leader of the team and has to take tough calls and say, look, this person is going to be here in the meeting, and this is going to be your role. These are the kind of questions that you can expect. These are the kind of people who are going to be present from the customer side. These are the sort of political dynamics that I'm facing in the account. So with a proper briefing and a proper rehearsal, if you can, especially if it's a large deal, I think it is worth the time to spend half a day before that, rehearsing it up, and then go into the call. If you do not do that, what happens is that people talk across each other in an effort to try to look useful, but it makes a mess of the call. Customer loses trust in you rather than the whole point of these kind of calls is really to get the customer to feel a little more confident about you, but you end up sort of undermining that.
Yeah, I remember one of my past guests was actually working in this space in the US as a defense contractor. And many of these defense proposals run into thousands of pages. A lot of technical details plus conformance to all the requirements, verifying it and all that. So this was actually, he then got into a stealth mode. Now he's doing quite good. And this was before ChatGPT was released. Just a few months before that, I was talking to him. They were trying to harness the power of LLMs or the AI to dig into the past proposals that the company had made. And based on that, based on what the requirement is, trying to reduce that, the time plus the consistency in putting all these things together. Now, with that kind of technology coming in, you still need someone who understands or who has an inkling of the past, the strengths, to give it a particular flavor. So that otherwise, the DoD RFP is the same. and everybody has to respond to only those points. But still, how do you bring that in? So the question I had for you was, in a RFP based opportunity versus a non-RFP based opportunity. Okay, non-RFP, I include both things, where say you go prospecting, trying to understand if there is an opportunity, or you hear of an opportunity, or you get called for an opportunity, and then you explore further. What do you think is a more effective approach for selling consulting services? I'm coming a little closer to, let's say, the PM, what PM
PM power.
has to offer.
As a general rule of thumb, if our RFP has been written already, you are already late, because somebody else, RFP is ultimately a set of specifications. In my experience, very rarely it has happened that RFP is implemented 100%, but it certainly helps in selection of the vendor. You actually get into much longer conversations with customer post selection in terms of your SOW, and RFP, the whole RFP response may or may not be useful, honestly, in that case. So let's say you get into a situation where you have got RFP. Okay, you didn't really work upon it, but you got to know that such and such company is, coming out with this RFP in my area, and you go and meet the procurement manager, and somehow convince that person to release the RFP to you. And sometimes they don't mind doing that because they also want to see more vendors in the play. It helps them to put pressure on their own preferred vendors. So you have got RFP, then you might as well respond to it. Then I think one is a chat GPT kind of a response, which is factually correct, but very dry, very not at all interesting to read. So I think the human element of making something very interesting by bringing stories, by citing case studies in the RFP response, okay, writing short replies, okay, I think it helps, because the people who are going to read the RFP at the other end are also very, very stressed junior people. Typically, the bosses aren't going to be reading the RFPs. They have delegated the task to probably a group of interns who really have to burn the midnight oil now, going through the RFP responses. So now that intern has become your customer in the short term, and you now need to get him to recommend you over others. So how do you make it easy for that person to go through your response, make it interesting for them? Add a summary letter, a really good summary letter, which talks about why your solution, based on the RFP, whatever RFP has listed out, why do you think that this solution is a better solution as compared to others, right? So first thing is to get shortlisted so that you get a chance to make a presentation. So that's how you try and catch up. Okay. Ideally, for me, I would love to go and talk to the customer before the RFP has been released. So sometimes, because of their own internal processes or because of some doubts that they have, they might still go for RFP, but then you get a chance to talk about what may be important for them. Okay, so for example, in the context of PM Power, certainly want to talk about coaching as a key element to the delivery. That training is training, but what makes one training different from the other training is how do you make sure that those people actually do what they have got trained for, and for which you need coaching. Number two, that anybody can look up the internet and figure out 10 topics that you need to get trained for, but nothing to beat the experience of a person who has been in these kind of roles and who can help you in coming out with the right sort of content for the training, which is suitable for you, for your industry, for your current situation, right? So you try to bring those elements which differentiate you from others. Okay. Somebody might want to emphasize pricing, for example. I'm not judging them. It's not my preferred way, but that's a way of doing things. And so you can actually get people to write RFP. The third way is, I think, the best of all, is to try to avoid the RFP process itself, because it's just time consuming and it just brings too many elements into play. Customers also start getting paralyzed because there's so much information that they just do not know anymore how to make up their minds. So you actually try to tell them what could be a good way for them to make a choice without having to go through such a extended evaluation process, unless you're a PSU or somebody who's got regulations and all that, that cannot be helped. And so in which case, I think the best way to really do it is a very short POC. I always prefer that as a way of getting, because that way customers also get to experience us as a delivery organization. And that kind of creates the confidence in the company. So, doing a POC, half a day, 1 week, maybe, with clear outcomes. That is my preferred way of engaging with customers.
Yeah, that's interesting because when this company, Chroma launched first, I like their tagline. They used to say, "We help you buy."
Okay.
They don't say that we are selling.
Yes.
When you mentioned that, they also need to know how to buy or how to choose and all that, that kind of segment. Which
Yeah, I've
means,
tried the Chroma salespeople though. They are very, very deeply trained on the product specifications, but they have no idea. Poor kids, actually, they're very young people, most of them. They have no idea how to really understand the customer's problem. I was trying to buy a small, these bars, sound bars that you have, right? Not a very expensive one. But the television that I had at that time didn't really have very good sound quality. So I just wanted a small one. And he tried selling me Bose, and then came down to some local brand finally, but not at all helpful.
at least the stated company thing was, "No, we help you buy." So essentially, then it means that you are becoming a problem solver for them. In that sense, while
That would be a little egoistic statement, really, Shiv. I think you are salesperson is at best a facilitator to help the customer. They are the ones who solve their problems for themselves. We just help along.
Then we also hear of different personas of buyers, particularly in the B2B or the enterprise space, the technical buyer, business buyer, procurement, and so on. So when you approach them, is there a preferred sequence or the way in which you communicate or what you communicate with them, whether levels of detail or different things? How do you prepare for that?
I think the most important person is the person who's going to be using your product. So the user, and then there are different influencers. There is the economic buyer, the technical buyer, who all exert some influence over the process, and sometimes you need to get past them, of course. But first and foremost is the user, the person who's going to actually use your product, and talking to them and trying to understand from them what might be their key, 1, 2, 3 concerns. What kind of experiences they have had in the past with other vendors, with my company as a vendor, if at all, right? So with that information only, then we get into a little more. Then they might want to bring other people into the conversations, but sometimes what salespeople make a mistake is that they start assuming that the one who's speaking the loudest is the most important customer. That's not never the case, actually. The only two people who matter are the people, one who's going to use it and the person who's going to release the money. These are the two people who you need to have on your side. Others, it's a question of getting the information.
So now a little segue. So far, we've been talking a lot about the sales activity and so on. One bridge that probably takes us to the other side is the value proposition. When it comes to consulting kind of services, or when it is about the future state, how do you kind of convey the value of what is delivered, or how do they feel that they are getting value?
Right. So I just want to make one statement before I get there, is that sometimes the role of salesperson gets exaggerated. Actually, the salesperson can only be as effective as the playing field within which the salesperson is trained. In Hindi, there is a proverb which says, "Akela chana bhaad nahi phod sakta," meaning bhaad is the oven in which you. So, one single chana is not going to make a difference. So salesman is that single chana, he's not going to be able to make a earth of a difference if the playing field which is in terms of my addressed market, the problem that I'm solving, why I'm better than others, unless those things are sorted out at the company level, right? Because they cannot be solved by the individual. It has to be solved by the company. So having said that, the value proposition for consulting, to my mind, is really about our ability to solve the problem. So, I want to expand my business. I want to think about newer markets that I want to address, business challenges. I like to bring a consultant from outside. They have knowledge from similar uh, assignments that they have done across the industry for many more customers, number one. Number two, they bring an outsider's view. They can be free of the internal politics. They will not be afraid of calling a spade a spade. And sometimes it also helps me get respect internally for hiring a particular consultant, right? So, if I've got a McKinsey or BCG to come and do something for me, obviously to that extent, it also boosts my reputation inside the company. Just a very simplified way of looking at it. There can be more nuances. So first of all, the problem that I am solving, okay, and what is that problem? Okay, if the one of the answers to that could be, let's say that I need to train my people. But if that is the only thing that I have to offer, then will I be satisfied? I personally feel that the customer may not really be satisfied with that as an answer. I'll take an example from the IT side. Somebody like a McKinsey or a Accenture is advising the customer on the strategy, including IT strategy. And then different SOWs are worked out. Okay, this. And then for each SOW, they go out and hire a vendor, which can be an Indian vendor. Right? So who's the one who's really the consultant here? Who's the one who's solving the problem? It is really the person who's working at the initiation of the whole thought process. Let's say I want to improve my customer experience. It's a real example I'm taking from the industry of one of the customers that I worked with, where they said that we want to improve our customer experience. Okay. And over a period of 10 months, this problem statement yielded 3 or 4 different SOWs. And for one of those SOWs, we competed. The company that I was working for at that time, we competed for that. So I think the real problem solution situation is when you think of that business problem that I have to improve the customer experience. That is where the real consultant's value add is. After that, it is really the tools that you have and the kind of things that you've done. So again, to come back to the context of PM Power, what is the kind of a challenge that the customer is facing? And can you help that customer solve that problem? And what will it take to solve that problem? What kind of different capabilities need to come together in order to solve that problem? And then within that, there can be SOWs for each of those pieces of work. So we have to decide what are we going to compete for. And accordingly, you can figure out your, catalog.
Yeah, but finally, when it comes to a decision of buying, there is going to be a number attached. What I've seen is that when they are getting something kind of material, like a software, some solution, something else, or a hardware, something like that, it is one kind of negotiation or the kind of expectations and stuff like that. But when it comes to software, even procurement teams are probably not aware of what is the value that they are getting, how much should they put, what number should they put there? Why is it so much? Why can't it be 1/10 of it or 1/5 of it or something like that? So from that kind of a value, how can experts kind of project or communicate or show that this is kind of the value that they will get?
So that is really the, we started by talking about understanding the customer, understanding the domain. So end of the day, again, I will take a non-PM Power example just so, it's probably easier.
Sure.
A telecom operator has this huge infrastructure, switches and routers and networks all over the place. Billions of dollars have been spent. How do they monetize it? By billing the end user for the usage, right? So you are having this call, so here's the bill, right? How quickly can the bill be generated? How error-free can the bill be generated? How much of innovation can I bring into the bill? For example, can I give you a different rate plan if you're a heavy user as against somebody who's a very light occasional user? Can I give you some additional services because you tend to use video calling a lot? So, can I give you some additional thing? That is what makes a telecom operator more successful, right? So this is the very broad dynamic. So there are billing solutions, Shiv, which can cost you $100 million. And there are billing solutions that can cost you $1 million. And there are billing software companies which will give it to you for free. If you press them enough, the salespeople can be sometimes desperate enough, yes, to actually sell you something for free, right? Because they hope to get more sales if a big customer were to purchase it, right? So it is really then up to the salesperson, backed by his team, backed by his company, to create the difference in the mind of the customer. What is the difference between 100? It's all software, right? But what are you getting in return for that software? Are you getting peace of mind? Are you getting the ability to compete? What is that 100 million in the context of your 100 billion network anyway? It is less than 1%, right? So it's very easy to get sidetracked, lose the wood for the trees. I think that big picture understanding and conveying that cannot happen unless you really understand your customer's business and understand what you're selling and what difference it is making to that person. Price is just a way people use to reduce the uncertainty in the process. If I do not, if I'm looking at a Chinese made car, for example, with the unfortunate perception that people generally have of, and I look at that car and that car has a value, and there is a German car which has a value, and I'm not in the mood to spend that much money on the German car, and the Chinese guy then throws in a sweetener. So it reduces my risk of going with the car because I've reduced my investment. But then your real risk is not the money. Your real risk is the maintenance that you will pay for that car. And that is what the salesperson has to talk about. The fact that you might be using that car to go on a very important business trip and the car breaks down, and then it's going to take a month to get that part from somewhere is a much bigger cost that you will bear as against the little extra money that you will pay now. So that is really the difference that you need to bring upon it. Software is a very similar thing. A lot of my personal education in selling software has been around this particular dimension. So it's something I'm very passionate about. People sell software for cheap, but that is not the right way. Software is actually a very, very involved piece of work, which is going to make or break. And my first software sale, I still remember a long time ago. That person opened the box and he looked at the floppies and he said, "Oh, this is it. You're charging me 15,000 for these 5 floppies. I could have gone to Nehru Place. I could have bought it for 200 rupees." Right. So as a young salesperson, I didn't really know how to answer him. I really felt bad that I have sold him something which he could have got for much cheaper. Right. I was trying to sell the Instaplan software. It was one of my first sales.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And later on in life, I sold a 10 million billing software to a customer who was getting it for 50,000 from the competition. And then I felt that my journey has really got complete.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah. So is this the same as what they call as a TCO or?
Yes, ultimately, yes.
Okay. Yeah,
ultimately, you have to make the picture bigger. And obviously, there is a little bit of vested interest in that. Obviously, you will try to do things. But, I think customers have become a lot more smarter than they've been. They understand these things very well.
So I want to touch upon something that you mentioned a little earlier, which is while you are engaged with the customer, you are trying to co-create a solution, all that is there. But then to prove or validate that expectation that is set, delivery has to match. And many stories we hear about the impedance mismatch or the healthy distrust, whatever terms we want to use, between sales and delivery. What has been your experience, and if there are challenges, what has been your style of
There is
handling?
a huge distrust. You're absolutely right. And uh, delivery just sees sales as people who are going to make easy promises in the effort to get a deal, and then leave them to clean it up. After they have left, they've made their commissions, they're gone, and now I'm stuck with this customer. I think my own solution to this over the years, what I have understood is that delivery has to be involved in the sales process from the very beginning. It cannot be coming as a surprise to them at the end of the sales cycle. Not only because it is the humane thing to do, it's the right thing to do. It is also because as part of the sales process, your ability to generate the customer's confidence. You see, it's all about getting the trust of that customer in what you're selling, whether it's a pen, whether it's a huge software. End of the day, customers must be able to trust you. Trust you with the money, that I'm making the right decision. And delivery, meeting the delivery people is a huge part of that, because that is what And so what I often tell people is that it is a mistake to assume that the salesperson is selling, then I'm delivering. Everybody is in the sales cycle, honestly. Everybody is in the sales cycle, from the person who designs the website to the person who's actually talking to the customer to the person who's going to make the delivery. Everybody is selling. We are just selling differently, because all incrementally we are just adding to that trust factor that the customer has in us. And in case of consulting, in case of IT projects, nothing like actually meeting the people who are going to be working on this and getting that confidence that yes, I'm in good hands, because it's not going to end in one day. It's going to run for months, years, maybe.
Yeah. So the
Sorry, just want to make one important point is that in this digital age, customer advocacy is very important. The only thing that differentiates us from the other vendor is the customer advocacy. Customer advocacy won't happen if the delivery is not up to the mark. So you can be a very good glib talker and very fancy whatever, but if you do not have the right NPS scores behind you, right customer feedback behind you, you're not going to make it. You're not going to get it.
So would it be fair to compare the role of a salesperson to that of this musical instrument dole, where you get hit from both sides?
I think all of us in corporate lives are like that. So I think all of us are really dholes, but we are trying to make a good, nice sounding tune out of it in a rhythm.
Yeah.
That is life, I assume. I maybe once upon a time in my life, I would have probably done a little bit of self-pity, thinking like that I'm just getting the raw end of the deal from everybody. Customer shouts at me, boss shouts at me, my colleagues shout at me, nobody trusts me. But I think past all that now, honestly.
Yeah, that's good, because that was the next curiosity that I had was, no, they say that typically to be a good salesperson, you should know how to handle rejection. And then they also say that you should be shameless and ask. Now, some of these may not come naturally to somebody.
Those are, yes, those are little personality things. I think people have it or don't have it. In case of salespeople, you have to ask. There is no other way. There's no point being coy, and if you have given a proposal, you might as well ask the customer, "Hey, who else are you considering?" If you don't ask, he's not going to tell anyway. So worst case, he will not tell you. So then the next question, okay, so what do you think about the price? Is it higher, lower than your. So I think rejections in life in general are useful because they tell you what you can do better. Okay, a win probably does not teach you as much as a rejection does. So I don't mind telling you that I started my sales life by being thrown out of a customer meeting.
Oh.
There was this guy in Pragati Maidan. Pragati Maidan was a entity by that at that time, and they would buy IT, and I was trying to sell software to them, and I just went there and I said a few things, and that fellow got up on his seat and he said, "Can you go outside?
Oh,
Ask your boss to come and see me."
oh, yeah, that would have been hard.
Yeah, for a youngster, it's very hard.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll come back to this. But before this thing about handling all the pressures of selling, normally I like to ask my guests some career tips. Usually it's for two segments of people: those who are considering a career in IT or anything related to IT, and the other is people who are probably mid-career, who are trying to figure out what am I doing here and can I do something else. You can choose to respond either for both segments or anyone. Whether a sales role is something that, let's say, a typical techie can consider, or if you're just entering as a sales in IT. Let's say somebody has done specialization in sales in the graduation, and if they get into IT, what would be your tips for them?
Let's take the first case.
Hmm.
I think every person in technical role should go through a sales step. Being in front of the customer, hearing the customer, understanding how people are going to use your product makes a huge difference. Even if, let's say, even if it is something like consulting, even if it is not a software solution, I think to understand how people are going to finally make use of your product is very important. Okay. To that extent, this ivory tower approach of having people as only sales and having as only tech is probably artificial and limiting. People should, I think any company should, just like in consumer product industries, people start by being in frontline sales before they move into more cushy head office roles. Helps to be able to imagine that person who's actually using your product and how he's using and what value it is for that person. I think useful for anybody. Secondly, selling in any case, even if you don't formally go for selling as a career, you have to have the ability to influence people, right? You're an IT person, let's say, you still need to influence your teammates. You still need to influence your bosses. You still need to influence the salesperson into, going with a certain solution approach rather than the other, right? So you are influencing people anyway. So you are selling. Call it selling, call it influencing, but ultimately we are driving outcomes in a team. And so all of us, we play that role. There is somebody who's going to go and communicate to the customer, that's fine. But we are all doing that influencing in our daily lives. When we tell our children, for example, about what career is right for them, no tougher customer than your children, honestly, because they really draw it out of you, because you really need to make it useful for them, important for them. So your siblings, whatever. So selling, I think, is a universal capability. Ability to network, ability to communicate well, ability to find out what's important, ability to listen to somebody. I think these are things that everybody should have, regardless of whether they choose sales as a career or not. I've worked with a lot of small companies, and I think this is a universal truth I've learned, that a lot of them are really putting a great deal of importance on the technical aspects, on building that fantastic product which is going to be a killer. I think you need to put a sales hat on and figure out whether people actually need that product. Okay, what price will they pay for it? What are the kind of partners I need to have in order to sell this product? Those are kind of answers that sometimes the purely technical minded people don't have. I'm not saying that you need a classroom training to do this. Sometimes life itself teaches you these lessons, but you need to really think about those aspects as well. Why should a customer buy from me? I have this great product. I have this fantastic idea. Sometimes I just assume that, somebody is going to he's just waiting for me to walk in and say, hey, I've got this. It's not like that. People have their own reasons to buy. And if you don't fit into those, then you are not going to be able to make a sale. So I think personal experience I want to share here is I did my MBA the business education did not have a single paper on selling. Okay, something which is so crucial. There was not a single paper. There was something on managing sales teams, but there was nothing on selling. And even today, when my son has gone for his MBA now, I looked up his curriculum. There is even now, I couldn't find a single paper on selling. So for something which is so crucial to people's success, even if they don't take up a selling role, I'm a little surprised that we are still not addressing this in a formal way.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Because I know that besides the informal learning that I had with my mentors, whatever formal training I could get, and there are some very good people who've written very good books. Even today, I try and find time to read those books whenever I can, just as a refresher, because new things are happening all the time. There is a book called Agile Selling, incidentally. So Agile has been applied to selling also, and very usefully, actually. So I think formal education helps. Formal learning helps.
So before we close, I have one question, which is, in our brief interactions, always found you very composed and cheerful. Are there any personal practices that help you stay grounded?
Thanks for saying that, Shiv. It's very nice of you to say that. I don't know. Maybe as I've gotten older, I've learned to detach myself from the outcomes. Try not to be too invested into what's going to happen. Just live in the moment. I try and practice that. I've been practicing meditation, spend a fair amount of time trying to do these kind of, I think that's probably made a difference. I think as you get older, you start realizing that not everything is going to go the way you want it to. So you learn to make peace and just give it your best, whatever best. There's that advertisement, Tata, again, we took Tata Croma example. There was another Tata Sky, I think it said, Mangega nahi to milega nahi. Something like that.
So on that note, thanks a lot, Deepak, for sharing your experience and particularly some of these insights. I think it'll take some time to sink in, but I think it's much deeper than just the words that you mentioned. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Shiv. It was really nice talking to you. Really enjoyed it.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.